So tonight in our work meeting, we wanted to talk about oversized structures. You know, that was on our agenda at our last meeting, but we felt like that we needed some more time to talk about that. So we are going to, Malcolm has some information on that. Planning Commission had reviewed this, had some recommendations that they passed up to us. And so then.
This is different than what we saw last time.
It is not.
Oh,
This is the same that we saw last meeting. It was just when we were talking about it, because in our last meeting, we talked about if we wanted the attorney to draft an ordinance for, but some of these, you know, people felt like they really didn't have a chance to have reviewed this. And so we wanted to go over it with you again. So, Malcolm, do you want to just kind of go through it? And as we talk about this, we can see what.
Yeah. Probably don't have to worry time about, I mean, we have those ordinances there, but they're just our existing ones, just some red lines of what changes would be if we adopted what was recommended. So just to summarize in the high level, we first started off with just the idea was just to talk about what we're seeing. So these are the averages of sizes we're seeing for the two different zones for oversized structures. 3,600 in an R1 and 2,000 in an R2. The idea was that, you know, we don't ever reject them at the planning level. Sometimes there's conditions, but I think only see one or two. They're normally not related to size, they're just more related to random things that get brought up that the resident has an issue. And so we thought rather than fill all of them, that it might make sense to increase the allowed size. And then we can improve them at, you know, staff level as opposed to making them get a conditional use for each one. So that was the discussion. The recommendation was to make the changes to be this size. I do know, Morgan. Thanks. There we are. So increasing, you see R2 before of the prior one on there for you. Just updated it. R2 would increase to where you could go to 2,500. R3 quarter could go to 3,000 and R1 could go to 5,000. So that was the recommendation. They also had a recommendation for accessory dwelling units that we could talk about a little bit, but it was really allowing the living space to increase from 960 to half of the allowed size for the accessory structure. So the idea was we're approving them either way, and the accessory structure or the ADU or accessory dwelling unit piece was that it would help with our moderate income housing strategies. So that was really our discussion. Do you guys have interest?
Clarify that a little bit. How it would help with that?
Yeah, one of our strategies has been accessory dwelling units. So we report on them. They want to know how many we have. We do a pretty good job of keeping track through minutes and also through my city inspect. So we would, in theory, it should incentivize more people, right? If they can do a little bit better with bigger living space, and we should be able to have more applications accepted and then report more. In addition, I guess the idea would be it shows that we're trying to promote them here in town, but that would just accomplish that strategy more so because that's been our strategy identified.
Just to make them bigger, you think there'll be more applications?
I think so, but I guess it doesn't guarantee it, but I think it would incentivize people. We don't get a ton of pushback about 960, but I think people would definitely go bigger. They could. But do you guys have interest? I guess let's just take them one at a time. So oversized structures. You guys have some interest in increasing the oversized structures and working on that recommendation? I can pull up our existing, but what you guys are talking about.
We really haven't noticed any really being turned down when they come in. So that's what we thought if they changed this,
And there are gonna have to be so many people in applying for a conditional use permit for one. Sometimes I think there's been there might be something that planning commission has to make sure that they meet all the, they have everything in order. I don't know if there's necessarily that they have everything in order. I don't think there's ever, or I shouldn't say ever, very frequently, they're not doing that.
So are you counting on the building permit to catch any easement and intrusions and that kind of thing? Is that to the exact same thing?
Yeah, well, and I would still review them all, just like I do before I send them, but I would review them all. And yeah, we'd have the building permit as a safety net for easements. They did mention, and this is a separate topic, so we can stay on it, but they'll still want a CUP for anything bigger than that, like conditional use. For accessory structures, they still, or ADUs, sorry, they still want a conditional use permit, so those would all go through anyways if we adopt what they want. These are our current ones. So you
So a question with that then, just as you said that, so if it was an oversized structure, but it had an ADU within it,
can-
then it would still go to planning commission.
Yeah,
The only ones that wouldn't would be if it was just strictly like a pole barn and they were going to use it for storage.
these are our current ones. You can go 2,000 in an R1, 1,800 and 1,600, so,
So say they build a 5,000 square foot shop
yeah.
and 2 years later, they want to put an ADU in it. So they would come back for just a building permit or a conditional use permit.
Conditional use,
Okay.
yeah. So that went from 2,000 to that, 1,800 to that, and 1,500. Yeah, 1,500 for that one. Or 16, sorry. To give some perspective, not that you glean everything from other cities, I don't think that's what you want to always do, but most cities are doing 25% of the rear yard maximum for accessory structures, not just one, any. And then once you hit 25% of your rear yard, you're done, no more. So they do it, but you can imagine like a 43,000 square foot home or lot, right, of 1 acre, 43,560 or whatever. You'd be, what would that be, 4,000, 8,000, you know what I mean? An acre lot could go up to like 12,000 before most of the cities even cut them off. So that's a Plain City, Far West, couple of the others, West Point. That's how they do it. We talked about that with planning commission. They didn't want to set a hard and fast cutoff where once you hit 25% or probably 10,000 for like a half acre or something. They didn't, well, I guess a little less than that, probably like 6 or 7 for a half, but they didn't want to do a hard cutoff. They wanted to have the autonomy to still consider it for conditional use. It was for, I don't know, a riding arena or something like that. Came in that was bigger.
So does this have any impact on the surface has to be permeable, 40%, it used to be 40%, so where are we today?
I think our current impervious surface ratio is 65. Does that sound right, Morgan? And it wouldn't change that. They'd still have to adhere to it. But yeah, that would be something Nate always checks that.
Yeah,
Yes, they couldn't go above 65% on impervious surface, so this would count.
that's covered with something, right, 65, so 35% it
Can
has to be permeable.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. I think there was a couple concerns I had, and maybe we could add to this, that we talked about last time was, number one, off-street parking. So if we allow this to happen, it could significantly, impact more parking. So as long as they provide enough off-street parking to facilitate that new structure or that new dwelling, I think that should be important, especially for our guys when they're plowing roads and mail carriers and safety and all that, fire trucks getting in and out. And then the other thing, I know there was an issue that came up that the very smallest lots, I guess, would qualify. According to that, ratio, they can only go up to
Yeah, 600.
600.
Yeah, because these ones, they didn't recommend an increase.
So I think
For
they
that.
should probably stay the same at 960, as long as they, can adhere to the same criteria as the others. They should be able to stay the same.
So we do a minimum of 480 or whatever minimum is, 400. And a maximum of 960 or 50% of the allowed use, whichever is greater. That makes sense.
And then the other thing I think you oughta, in there is the dwelling needs to be on a fixed structure. Cause I could see somebody, like these tiny homes are real popped up, I'm not against them.
And pull it in on wheels.
They pull it out grills. They're going to hook up to the sewer. I can see that being a problem, so whatever the dwelling is, no matter the size, it's got a fixed foundation, fixed structure. It could be the manufactured home, they just pour the foundation walls in there. For the two pieces.
We can add that, sure.
Cinder wall. With trailer homes, it's not a fixed structure, but they do it all the time.
Yeah, everyone's trying to keep the system, something, yeah, that's a point too.
And permanent foundation, I don't know what you, how you describe it, but a permanent foundation, I don't know if you consider cinder block permanent or not. I kind of kick it out pretty easy.
I can add a,
Permanent foundation meets, ICES or, the codes.
There's got to be state code.
State code.
Foundation.
I can have Nate Tolman advise on that and just have it, instead of make it, saying we would for all essentially, whatever we have to do to control that. The foundation lines. With parking, we currently require. We actually probably need to do an update. We can look at, I don't see anything for a primary structure. We require, if you look in our code, we require a 2-car garage for a duplex. Which Nate's just been applying across the board, because it doesn't actually spell it out anywhere else that I've noticed either. So for sake of moving on, we'll look at that, but let's say it's a 2-car garage requirement, which probably implies, right, to start, there's stalls in the garage and probably inherently 2 more likely just behind it, but either way. With our accessory attached or detached, we require 1 additional for either. Most cities require 1, 2. We haven't been enforcing, well, I haven't, it's newer to me, I haven't been following up on that, I probably need to. And then, well, I will, and then the other one thing to mention is some cities are requiring 2 additional for detached. I didn't see anyone requiring 2 for attached or an internal,
You say a garage or just a space?
just a space. And they'll call out like a, they'll call out the surface material, like it can't just be, well, asphalt or road base type, a solid surface that's either called that as concrete or asphalt, I think generally. So most of them are a lot require 2, everyone requires 1 like we do, some require 2 for detached, so. Right now we're at 1, do you think that's enough? I mean, it'd be 1 for an internal and 1 for a detached, and then. Probably, a 2-car garage for a home.
So ours right now says parking, a minimum of a 2-car garage is required for each dwelling unit. And we talked about that a little bit last time, but is that something we even want to look at? Because if this is for each dwelling unit, based on this, we'd have to have a 2-car garage for the house and then a 2-car garage.
Well, this one right here,
Yeah, right.
this is,
There it is.
this got dragged over for some code, this goes under a duplex ordinance. Then it ties into this, so this is for our duplexes. So. I think they just spelled it out for duplexes specifically, because they don't want anyone to get rid of a garage requirement for a duplex, so that's why they spelled it out, but it's not spelled out anywhere else.
Okay.
So do you guys think 1's enough, or do you guys want 2 for a detached?
you know, you get a little 960, one's probably sufficient, but if you go above the 960, maybe it should be two.
Yeah.
The 961 and above that, there's two.
Gotcha.
I don't know.
Based on square footage.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them do that in their table. It'll have a square footage calculation. We could do that. We could figure that out and bring something back that shows at this amount of square footage, you would be at 1, and anything over, like 0 to 1,000 square feet, maybe you're at 1, and then 1,000 and above, you're at 2 or something.
Couple of things I brought up last time, which was on our first page, which says proof of occupancy must be provided to city annually. And we didn't really decide how that was going to be done. It was suggested that maybe they have to come in and apply for a business license, and then every year when they renew that, then that shows, because you know, the occupancy was the owner has to live in at least one of them, you know, they can rent them both out. But we probably need to decide what we want to do with that, because right now it just says proof of occupancy must be provided. But we never created a form for that, and so currently we aren't doing that. But if it says here that we are going to have to, then either we take that out and we're not going to, or if we're going to, we need to have something in, and then for the rest of being able to do that. So I don't know, and I don't know if on city inspect there's a way. And then I think if we get a business license, I don't know that we necessarily want to charge people every year to come in, but if they had to just come in and fill that out at least, then that was a good suggestion, and at least we could keep track.
And then they'll help with that at all. We can, see your.
Depends if people are honest or not. We can fill it out for them and say that. Anybody can fill it out for them and not.
Well, I know when we did this too, we talked about there might be instances, like it could be military service, some of the an obvious mission, that there might be a period of time when they aren't in either one, and we were going to have one that they could come in and go out of the city, but I know we haven't ever done that.
How long are their conditional use permits valid for? Just 1 year? Yes, we could do a better job of following it, because they should, in theory, they sign that and they sign that. They should only be valid for a year to begin with. We don't, under full transparency, we don't follow up. Like, I've never gone through, like, these ones are expired. I'm sure Morgan does in her free time, though. But we can do better at following up. Or if there are neighbor complaints, we keep those. Obviously, they haven't filed well, and we would know it's expired. They have to come in and renew, but.
What if you just kept a database and then January 1? Well, because you'd have to take a snapshot in time, because everyone's gonna be different. You have that database, you send them out a notification, and just come in and do it for free, but if you don't do it within 60 days, you gotta pay $25. It's gonna take your time.
Well, because we have that, or they will be charged with a misdemeanor, so we don't really have anything in our
Yeah.
code enforcing that with a misdemeanor. So again, these probably aren't bad words, but if we're going to have anything, then we should do it. You know, there's no sense saying if we never really ever going to.
So where it says the city may also require proof of occupancy at any point in time. What if you just did a spot, randomly, you just said, okay, here's 30 ADUs, and you just randomly select 5 of them with proof of occupancy.
That's not bad.
Yeah, he's gonna do it. Yeah.
It's a code planning commission.
Code enforcement.
Oh, yeah. This is crazy.
I know who it is.
But I might be, because business licenses you do every year.
Right.
So the first year, like you said, you know, Bryce, everyone would be at a different time, but maybe after that original year, maybe every January, they're notified like a business license and just say you need to come in and fill this out.
They currently don't have anything in our code for rental properties. I have a bunch of people, like businesses, that will say, there's in your code that requires us to rent out this house. I've never found anything, so that's something we could create.
Mhm.
I don't know, people are trying to go back and be part of the tracking system and the documentation.
And the other thing is, they're not necessarily rentals. They may be parents or children that live next door. And they're renting it to their family. most likely.
Most of the ordinances I shifted through today, the, for rentals for ADUs and DADUs, they're mostly wanting them, they'll have code that says you can't rent them for less than 30 days, just because of short-term rental issues, so I see that often. They can't, if they're gonna rent one in their house or on the back of their house, it has to be over a 30-day contract.
They don't have to.
They don't want short-term stays.
So we don't. We don't have. For a code.
Just that language right there is, well,
One thing that came up too is, do we want their ADU to be bigger than their home? Because based on singles and maybe that doesn't matter. But that's something we probably need to look at if it is something we think. I don't know that that matters. But
You know, I
that
thought-
could happen.
I thought about that as well, like someone built got a 2,000 square foot house and they're on 2 acres and they build a 5,000 square foot shop and 2,500. Then maybe their intent is to live in that one and rent a home. As I thought about it, I don't think it matters, you know, I think it kind of muddies it a little bit if we, you know, limit the size. Because the owner's gonna be living on the property.
Mhm. I don't think it
Yeah,
matters.
how could they can take advantage of? I don't think they could take advantage of the city. Whether they live in bigger
Yeah,
ADU than a house or
well,
not.
they're gonna pay more taxes, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we live in our house.
Only other question with that then is the way that it got recommended, it might not have been the intention by planning commission, I'm not stating, that's just the reality of how it will be is. If we allow them to, so these are the proposed, 5,000 in an R1's the proposed max. But they also were okay with them getting a conditional use for something bigger. So we either need to explicitly say, the maximum living space is 50% of the allowed size. You get what I mean? Because they got a conditional use for like 10,000, or you know what I mean? They could technically get a real, you know what I'm saying? So you want to cap them at the max is here. Do you care if they got a conditional use for something bigger? I mean, it would be conditional, so they'd have to come here. But they could do a pretty big ADU that way too.
I don't know, maybe just cap it, and then if that situation arises, let's take a look at it.
is that very. So, makes sense.
Okay, so, yeah,
Hopefully that now.
And I was thinking too that I brought up last time that just said, again, this is at the bottom, any exception of the owner occupancy must be approved by the planning commission. So do you want people that have to get them approved, and again, they'll be charged with a misdemeanor? So that would be, for example, like we talked about, if somebody came in there on military service and going to be employed for 6 months, do you want them to have to come to the planning commission to get that approved to be able to do that, or is that just something they could do in the city office?
Starting the application. I
Okay,
think most of
that's right.
there's a little.
Yeah.
I think so too, and I think they could just.
The fine is one thing, but misdemeanor is entirely different, so.
Uh,
They will be charging people criminally for stuff like this.
I think maybe if we state some of those criterias like military service.
Yes.
mission,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Mhm.
If they fall into those categories, they just come into the city to say apply for this one.
That's
And if
it.
there's some unique thing, then that, I guess they could petition. Planning commission, but. We try to avoid that.
Yeah. And then it talked to about how it had to be behind, and I know last time we talked about, we want to have it be that it could be on a side yard. Cause you know how some people have it wide and they might not have deep enough to be able to have it behind. So I don't know if that's something,
You know, I was kind of the one that kind of spearheaded that, but the thought process was, is so you got a line of homes, I just took my street, for example. And everybody could put a house probably on, or an ADU on their street, and if they put it right at the same level, setback as the home, it just looks like a great big subdivision. I think it should be back a little bit.
you know,
Maybe not, maybe we could change it to the back of the house, maybe it's 10, 15 back to, I don't know,
yeah,
but that could be looked at, that's the thought process. process behind that, so just to look like a bunch of, you know, high density housing.
I agree.
I know some people disagree, that's okay.
I think it should be behind the front, but I don't know necessarily if they don't have, if they have a wide yard. I think it could be a little bit behind the front, like you said. Or maybe if we said 10 or 15 feet behind the front, whatever you thought was would work. And because if they have to have it clear behind the back, they might have a long, wide yard and not as stuff like that.
You know, my mom's got a really wide yard, but it's not very deep.
Yeah, and so if she had to put it behind her house, it probably wouldn't work.
Yeah, she wouldn't be able to put it behind.
Yeah.
At least halfway behind the frontage of the existing.
So if they're 40 feet deep and 20. Yeah.
Or maybe that could also be something they're going to have to come for conditional use too. I guess if they wanted a bit more, it's hard to get variances. So it's probably easier just to say.
Half the depth of the existing home. That sounds a bit easy to figure out.
Explain that to me one more time. So if the home set back 40 feet, home set back 40 feet.
So at least minimum 50% setback of the existing structure.
So it's not,
From the
Yeah.
front of the existing structure.
I'm not talking trying to get the house, that's that house, yeah.
So
I get what you're saying. So the house, if the house is 30 feet deep,
15.
you can go, yeah, you can go to 15 foot to the front of it, or up to the front. In the middle, you're gonna be in the middle in that case, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant?
Yes.
I thought you meant like the house is 20 feet width. Then this has to be back 10 feet.
Yeah.
That's it.
Isn't that what you meant?
Yeah, I explained it fine. I'm on the same page, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's just an idea.
Sounds good.
Seems to work. It keeps them buying house, but gives them, but they come up a little.
The whole point of some of these, ideas in the first place, like the size and everything, is so that you couldn't come along and try to sell off, part of your lot with a house on it, right? And the cities have done that. Have ADUs, as long as they keep them there for 2 years, and they can sell it off to a different home. And this would just, because if that's the case, you may as well just put. Okay, well, well, so. I don't know, but
Okay, well, I can put some work into that if you guys are all in agreement that you like the general recommendation. These changes, we can button it up and we'll probably have to, Brandon, you know, it's an option to vote. You guys can vote obviously how to, but I need probably before the obviously till the next time to get it right back and say, this is what your feedback was, this is how I would implement it. And then Reed could draft it and make sure it, you know, for our new attorneys could draft it and make sure it it's correctly put in.
So we're just voting on the draft to make correct. Yeah. So can I ask one more question on this? Fee schedule. Last time it said we were voting on it today. Is that going to take place? It said last time that will be voted on, or motioned on September 18th. And it's
Yeah.
not on the action items this time.
Yes.
No, the fee schedule.
Oh, yeah. So the fee schedule, we talked about it last time, but I didn't know that we'd ever came up with something that we were going to, and then we talked to Reed, we said we'd have something concrete before we voted on it, so. But it would be good to get that all buttoned up too, so by next. The week.
With-
we actually can-
With that, you guys say get rid of the misdemeanor, just define. Could we go ahead and define the fine in the fee schedule? Is that okay? So that it's on there, you can vote, okay. I'll try and define a fine that feels proportionate to our other fines. That way it's more actionable. We met with, Weaver County, or the Alan from Weaver County does our enforcement of our ordinance. He sent us 3 violations that were defined, which isn't like something you celebrate over, but at least it means they're following up, so. That was reassuring because we have a few complaints, so it sounds like their process is a little more dialed in now. And they sent us these 3 that need to go to fine, so I think it's important to get that fine schedule nailed down. So we can actually get some changes on some of these complaints.
Did we talk about internal ADUs last time? I can't remember if we did or not. No? So I found out a little bit of information about them. So internal ADUs, we know we have a lot of people in Denver that have basement apartments that probably are not reporting them to us. I checked with Nate as far as what you have to do for that, and of course, you know, they can be grandfathered in, so they wouldn't necessarily have to have a per se building permits like mine. Somebody would have to go back and say, you can't have a basement apartment if they've had one. But there were some specific things they would have to make sure they did. For example, there has to be a way for them to get out. So like a walkout basement, or at least a doorway that they can get out in case of fire. He said they used to be able to make them change the size of the windows. They can't anymore. So if when the windows were, if that was built and that was the size of it, he said we really pretty much came down and said, they're just grandfathered in. So, you know, if they wanted to do that permit, if we just came up with something for them to go, but then there's also then that is turned over to the county, and then they are classified as a duplex. Anyway, by the time I caught the county and we really figured it, I don't know that it's worth it. I don't know that we would have enough people that would ever come and tell us that for me anyway, when I was reading through all of this, and I thought, I don't know that we'd have enough that would come and want to tell us that it would be worth us going through all the work and developing something to put it out to people to say, come tell us you have a basement apartment. I don't know if people would or not.
What's they done to tell us?
Only that we counted as the moderate income housing is the only thing.
There was no advantage to them. So
No advantage to,
Well,
no, sometimes
I think there could be an advantage if a fire is started down in the basement and you're renting it out. I'm not sure your insurance company has to insure that as someone living there illegally, basically, you know.
so it depends on your insurance, because I called the check on that as well. Because we have missionaries that live in our basement. So when they lived in our basement, I called to see what they would have to do. And no, we didn't have to pay anymore. There wasn't anything. They said if they started the fire, we would still be covered. But that was only our, so I can't say that for every insurance company.
But you rent out your basement?
So we have missionaries that live there.
I mean, but you rent it out. Rent it out.
Well, they don't pay us that. But I asked them that. I said, you know, what would be the difference? And they said, no, as long as the homeowner is in a certain percentage of the home, it is still covered even if the fire was started.
Or rent.
So, yes. Mhm.
Well, that's,
And at first too, because it used to be, there were some really pretty strict requirements. There was like and that was really a matter of like a 2x6 that you had to put in the floor joist that would be separating the basement and the upstairs. And they said they don't even require any of that anymore. So, but some places, for example, I know like Auckland City, if they're going to rent out a basement, well, I can't say this without you saying, you actually had to do, it was like a good neighbors program. There was an actual course you had to take in order for you to say, but then it is listed as a duplex. And then if they ever sold their house and it's worth more if you say it's a duplex. But also you turn that in, it's a duplex into the county, and of course they're paying more taxes. But I don't, I mean, whatever you would want to do, but by the time I was done, because I was thinking, man, that might be a way we could count more units for our.
well, we talked about that a few years ago. There's a lot of people that are renting out basements. It's like an ADU, and we should have record of providing that should be part of our affordable housing. It should be
The only good
a way
thing
to count for that.
I could see as far as a safety thing goes, is if it was listed as a duplex and something happens there, EMS and fire and everybody would know that there were people involved. You know, I mean, that's the only thing that I can see that would be a bonus for anybody. But other.
Yeah.
I think it was worth your while.
Yeah.
I'm
Wow.
pretty sure state law can't prohibit IADUs. You can regulate them. I don't know how much they carry anymore. I'd have to look at that report. I'm not saying that's right, but I think they almost have just tried to make them required to be allowed. I don't even know if they really give us a lot of credit for them anymore, where they
Maybe
still do.
that's it, maybe that's it right there.
Could
They
be.
don't wanna give us a lot of credit as a.
Yeah, cause they're just, cause they really did
Yeah.
just make it a
So-
requirement for everyone to have to let IUDs
Yeah.
happen. You can regulate them. You can start it, but I know you can't just say no more. So now they really, I know EAD, the detached ones, that was reported, they wanted to know, but that's cause you can still stop those if you don't like them. Like, Harrisville doesn't have any, but
Surprisingly, a lot of cities don't, but you're really progressive when you were trying that, because I've been surprised how few cities do not have ADUs. Like, there's only, and that's a big thing that they're going to be talking about now next year in the legislature. A lot of, I'm talking about detached. ADUs. So I don't want to enter, and by the time I was done, I thought, yeah, this isn't worth it. I don't know that anybody would come. There's really wasn't a huge benefit to have someone go to all that work to do it.
was there anything else saying you guys, I wanna leave you guys a minute, I can get this. But structured, present it, then it's our meeting,
Yes.
to make sure that everything you mentioned is the way you anticipated.
So we will plan on that at the next city council meeting. If you're all right with that, we could have this on as a motion item to approve this. And then we will instruct, I'm sure by then it will be our new attorney to, get the ordinance all drafted. So we can be ready to approve that. Anything else you could see? Any?
You guys can all live in the back of your kids' homes now. So congratulations. You're welcome. Kids in your kids' homes over and you can see a little more thing in the back.
That's like.
Yeah, still up in the air.
Any reports from any meetings you've been to? At all that you want to? If you're,
With the sheriff's department, they've just been real busy and, they were happy to help us at Tomato Days and I think that for their help here and stuff, and they said they thought it went real well they've been out on a lot of SWAT calls and a lot of really dangerous things lately. So it's getting more dangerous by the week. So that was kind of not a really big thing to hear. That's what's been going on.
I was trying to see if I could find the date really quick, but the county has called a meeting with the mayors and the sheriff department to talk about the budget for the sheriff's department. Because they are always in the deficit as far as, the money they need to secure their officers. But, oh yes, it's right here. It's on Monday. This coming Monday at 1 o'clock. And so I can report back. I know it's with the county commissioners and the mayors, even the cities that do not contract with the sheriff department are invited to come to this because they're talking, because they still use some of their services. They still are using the jail and, everything else. One interesting meeting we went to with UDOT, just a little bit.
Well, I just had a thought on that. If you meet with them, I think it's real important that, because in the past, they've always divided our contract into two parts. Based on the calls, and based on the population. And at one time, I just had it 50-50, based on that, 50% calls, 50% population. But really, when you stop to consider that, a place like Hooper, where our population's really pretty high compared to most cities, but the amount of calls we have out here is really low compared to smaller cities. We end up subsidizing cities that have a lot more crime and a lot less people. And I think that's just something you have to really watch for. And, there was a talk, my opinion was it should always be on the calls. You just pay on the crime that's happening in your city, But
What's our ratio now? 60/40?
It's 60/40.
60.
So we almost had,
Population.
yeah, we almost had that 30/70.
I was gonna say, yeah.
We was just almost there. And then we had a few cities that we can't afford it, then you can't afford to do that because your crime's too high.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I know the cities have said to the county, they feel like the county should be contributing more. So I think that's why this meeting, because we have those regular meetings like you're talking about, and they go throughout the budget. It's the first time we've had them, but they've asked us to come. So because of all these meetings, they've said they felt like the county should be.
yeah, see, they want the mayors to decide. Because obviously if you're having more crime and less population, you're gonna adjust that accordingly. I don't think the commissioners ever want to be saddled with that responsibility, so it'd be good to have them involved in that
Yeah.
conversation.
Well, I would even say push for at least 5% more, but push for 65/35.
Yeah.
No,
Go for it.
anything that benefits us because of our call line is so push for something better than we got now. You know,
And the commission or the county should put in more money than they are. I mean, they, as far as I know, they're not really a large contributing factor to the sheriff's department. And they need more money to keep their citizens intact and well trained with no because according to them, they lose a lot of other cities.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Okay, Harris, so we went to a meeting and they talked about, it was with you, Don, about SR 177, so just a little bit of update on it. So they're in the stage of the environmental study and it will be done by the environmental study from 1800 north in West Point to 4,000 south in Upper. So that environmental study will be done by the end of next year.
It actually starts the fall of 25 on the summer.
Yeah, with the environmental study, they've already been working on it, but they said it'll be done.
The letter that we got said to advise that people would be coming in our yard, but they wouldn't start until the fall of 25 and they would finish by the end of 26.
Yeah.
So we could have 12-inch by 24-inch holes in our yard.
So they said, as soon as that's done, and they did show us up on the map, and it is 5,100, which we already knew. They give a really wide, because they haven't 100% determined if it's going to be the east and the west, other than they have been purchasing a lot of land along the east side. They said once the environmental study is done, then they will continue to buy more land. They will start the infrastructure as far as moving the utilities. They said the soonest that they would start construction would be 3 to 4 years. They're estimating 4 to 5 before that construction will be started on that phase. And there will be an off ramp at 5,500 south and 4,000.
Did they say anything about what area of housing is going to be notified of that? Because I was just wondering, because just the people on my road there aren't that people. They just let us know because it's going to impact people to the east of me as well.
So I went up after and asked him, because I said, okay, so you say the environmental study is going to be done, but then you're in the planning, but what does that mean? And he said, by the time the environmental study is done, we will know exactly where the road's going to go. So I don't know that they will let you know until the end of next year.
Yeah.
But they did say there was going to be a meeting in November at Rocky Mountain. And then they will be starting to meet regularly with the cities to start going through things, talking about infrastructure, what things need to be moved. So I think it will be here during, construction. Start.
I just wanted our neighbors to inform as well, if they were just going to strictly do the environmental study on our street. That just, but
It's a pretty wide area they have. Right now, it's 250 feet wide, what they need. It is going to be a divided highway. And so they say they have to have 250 feet. And then if they do the frontage road along the side, which they've talked about, but they won't say for sure yet. They show this big white swath that is on both sides of 51, but they haven't really said which side it's going to go. And I asked them specifically too, I said, okay, what about, so I said, you know, we're a little bit unique out here. I mean, no more so than other cities, but I said, you have 55, then you have 53, then you have 51, then you have 48, you have 46. And they said, well, it's less expensive, the more that they have it on the ground. The more that it has to be raised, it's more expensive, but it's a quarter of a mile on both sides of it running an off ramp that it takes for them to run off. A quarter of a mile.
Oh,
But,
that's awesome.
so you figure if it's from 55, it's gonna take to 53 to even get that going down. But they said some of those roads might be dead ended. They don't know right yet, but by the end of next year, they will. Then every bit of that will be on.
See, I thought Taylor said they were gonna decide one off ramp in Hooper. Because that's 1.9 miles from 5,500 to 10,000. And you just said a
Yeah.
quarter mile in each direction. That leaves literally just over a mile
Yeah.
between the next exit.
They told us at the meeting, both 55 and 4,000.
That makes no sense. What's
So you mentioned that we may have to do stuff, if we do, they pay for it, right?
Like utilities or anything,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, yeah, that's all part of the project, like they're moving water lines or sewer. They said that's what they would start with the infrastructure, those things. Never know.
Nothing past 4,000. But they have
Not yet.
not a word past 4,000.
Yeah. They don't, so they've already awarded the contract to do the environmental impact study for that distance, you know, the 18.
What you just talked about.
4,000, but they haven't yet. So that's who was giving us a lot of the information was the contractor. But they came and met with us probably, I don't know, it's been quite a few months ago to say, you know, they were, you know,
They basically said they'll have free reign on our property. So they'll just come to the whole.
So
But they still not fighting.
If it's that close to beginning construction, why are we talking about improving the intersection of 1,500 and 4,000 with West Haven? I mean, that's gonna be done. You know, give there 3 or 4 years and we tear it all up again. I mean, why dump more money into it?
Or even that sewer line they've been talking
Same
about.
thing, yeah.
If it's
yeah, well, 5,100 probably will still maintain an order. So that road would still be there, the road might be.
5,100 would be a frontage road, so this is gonna be on the west or east side of that.
Probably
Quite a ways then.
Wow.
250 feet is where they rotate, but they'll probably be 5,100. But again, that's,
When they talked to us initially, they said they would prefer between. controls. Looks like what they're thinking, sound very, very tight. But I don't know.
and Brian, our sewer price is. It doesn't continue. Okay, well, thank you.